The weather yesterday, very chilly in the mornings. It was down in the 50s. This morning, not as cold. You can see short sleeves going on for several of the riders. It's about 68 degrees this morning. So we've had some fluctuation in the weather, but Gunrunner should be used to it. This is kind of what the mornings have been like up at Santa Anita. You can see nice and restrained here under his rider. He would easily do more if asked, but I think they wanted to take it nice and slow for his first spin around here and see what this son of Candy Ride could do first time around the local strip. Side note, thanks to Steve Anderson, Candy Ride, Gunrunner sire, is the track record holder here at Del Mar for the 1.25 miles, the distance they will be covering in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He is going to get a little bit faster as they come down the stretch here, and I was able to talk to Scott Blasey and ask him what he thought, and he says that he thought that he got over the track well and that it seems like Gunrunner likes it. The track here a little bit tighter than what we've seen at Santa Anita, where the track was just a hair deeper. And of course, every track is a little different due to the atmosphere, the makeup of the track. So even if they use a very similar dirt between the two racetracks, the proximity to the ocean here just makes for a little bit different surface. And Gunrunner getting over it just fine here as we'll continue to watch him gallop as he prepares for the Breeders' Cup Classic, which will anchor the 2 days of racing here for the World Championships. Phillies field, and we had a work from Tell Your Mama. Bob Hess, the listed conditioner here for this 2-year-old daughter of Blame, still a maiden as she is going to be entered in this grade 1 event. You can see she works in company. She is the horse to the outside with the saddle towel. Again, the Breeders' Cup horses here all should be adorned with their saddle towels, which not only say their name, but they are color-coded for what race they are going to be entered in, and then they are given a number. If you check out breederscup.com, where you are watching these works, you can print out your own list so you can keep track of what horses are which ones. Some of the trainers opt to keep their own saddle towels on top of that, but we can still peek through and see those numbers, just a nice easy way to keep track. So here is Tell Your Mama working off of her company, and she started just a couple of lengths back, and you can see now being asked to pick it up, and these two really going at it early. You can see both the rider on the inside and the rider on Tell Your Mama had been asking and sending to try and get this pretty speedy early on work. The rider down along the inside still keeping her mount are moving, and then we have Kelsey on Tell Your Mama, who is going to be easily pulling away from her workmate right here. I thought she was going to go by. The other horse cut the corner a little bit, but you can see the rider on Tell Your Mama, her hands are not moving too much. They're relatively still, while the rider on the inside kind of trying to keep up by throwing across and tapping with the whip. So well in hand here for Tell Your Mama. And this is something we've been seeing from a lot of the workers here. Big gallop outs past the wire, continuing to work. So this is actually a pretty decent work for Tell Your Mama. Just, watching it first time through here, she was able to stay right head to head with her workmate, and then coming down the stretch, not only did she run well past her workmate, but she was also finishing up very good under pretty much no urging, so well within herself. I thought a pretty strong work getting to watch it just for the first time here. That's Tell Your Mama from the barn of Bob Hess, who is preparing for the 14 Hands Winery Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Ascension Gent Breeders' Cup Juvenile for the Colts here, 2-year-old Colts. We had some workers already today. Dale Romans sent out Free Drop Billy, winner of the Grade 1 Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. And let's take a look at that work. I know Dale was just in town last night to get to come and watch these horses work. Tammy Fox aboard, and this horse easily into stride. He's got this just massive stride here. As you can see, he gobbles up the ground and looks to be just skipping over the surface right here at Del Mar. He seems to have been galloping very nicely earlier this week in the couple of days that we have gotten to watch him. And you can see those ears flicking back, listening to what his rider is asking him to do. And while Tammy had wanted him to get into stride pretty quick as he broke off from that pony, he seems pretty relaxed here to just cruise along. I'll be interested to see what the time is for this work, because a horse with big strides like this, it can be really deceiving on how fast they go. Top of the stretch here for a Free Drop Billy. Very professional, changing leads on command. You see the nice long loop in the reins, so this horse well within himself. And we'll see if Tammy gets to try and get him to finish up later on, or if she's just going to let him do as he pleases. Nice and easy, right within himself, not being asked. Really just a nice long leg stretcher. Ears up here for Free Drop Billy, and Tammy's going to keep him going and try and keep his attention around the turn. One of the reasons that you see these horses continuing to go fast around the turns on these gallop bouts is just because horses can be really smart, and sometimes they learn once the wire's done that their race is done, and so they start to pull up, and that can leave them, sometimes pulling up a little earlier because they're extremely intelligent creatures. So you'll see a lot of them having to work around that bottom turn so they don't begin to jump the gun, so to say, and start to end their race too early. That was just a nice leg stretcher for this horse. He looks like he could go around 2 or 3 more times. Absolutely fit as a fiddle here for Dale Romans, this Free Drop Billy. Part of the contingent that arrived last night was Brian Lynch, Mike Maker, and Tim Gleishaw. He brings in a pair here, including Caro. And Caro stepped on the track earlier. He actually stood right in front of me for, I would say, almost 10 minutes. Just stood here very quietly and very patiently as there was some activity going on the racetrack. We went back to the barn and saw this horse. He seemed to be in good spirits and acclimating himself very well after just flying in yesterday. Those big white front legs and a big white blaze on Caro means that he's pretty easy to spot, and is going to be one to be watched in the turf sprint. I thought we were going to get a really good price on him, but he seems to be kind of a buzz horse now. He won the Grade 2 Woodford last time out, defeating Haji and Mongolian Saturday, who was a previous Breeders' Cup turf sprint winner. And this will be his first look here at Del Mar. You can see he's kind of wide-eyed a little bit at the big signs that are all down the backside for all of the Breeders' Cup sponsors, and he'll be coming along where all the big white tents are being built. So really good to be able to come out on the grounds a little bit early and get all of these antics, out from under your belt. There's a lot of new things to be seen, even for some of these warrior type horses that have traveled around. He's 5 years old. He's had 22 starts under his belt, 9 wins, by the way. And he has, been to quite a few different tracks, but as many tracks as you've been to, a lot of times you haven't seen anything like the activity you will see right here at Breeders' Cup during the week. So Caro here, his rider going to keep him pretty much in the middle of the track as he continues to gallop, and he seems to have gotten over the fact that those purple signs are not going to jump out and eat him anytime soon, and he's going to be able to continue his gallop here. All systems go for Caro. Here's a look at the field for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Birdie Gold out on the track for Gary Mandela. And this horse, first time in the U.S. Now, she is a Breeders' Cup win, and you're in Victor, winning the Pamplona Stakes in Peru, a Grade 1 event, going 1.25 miles on the turf course. She has only been defeated one time in her 5-race career, and that was 2 starts back in the República Argentina. She had to settle for second that day. And this is my first look at Birdie Gold here, a daughter of Birdstone out of a Touch Gold mare. So you definitely have distance top and bottom, so we can see why she has been liking these longer grounds. She also covers quite a bit of ground as she gallops here. She is equipped with the shadow roll to keep her from having her head just way too high up in the air. And again, another horse that's very interested in what's going on here with all the signage and the tents and the sun just starting to peek out over at Del Mar. Although we do have a heavy fog cover, it was nothing like we saw yesterday. Today we still have full visibility down below, even though up high it's pretty foggy. And now, as you can see, Birdie Gold really starting to relax much better. Janine able to drop her hands there and give the filly just a little bit of rein to play with. Birdie Gold galloping in preparation for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Birdie Gold finishing up that gallop there. Hemp Hemp Hooray, who will be preparing for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, also out on the track having a gallop. This horse broke the maiden on debut, was a 7-length winner of the Tyro, and then just beat in the neck last time out by Untamed Domain in the Grade 2 Summer up at Woodbine. First time going a route there. And Hemp Hemp Hooray will be saddled by Wesley Ward for Ken and Sarah Ramsey. You can see those familiar red blinkers there with the big white R for the Ramsey runners. Here's a look at the Las Vegas Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile pre-entered field. As you can see, a lot of horses with the first preference, second preference. Entries will be drawn on Monday, so we will have these firm fields for our Breeders' Cup races. And Iron Fist from the barn of Steve Asmussen also got his first taste of the Del Mar Strip, and to me, it seems like he really enjoyed it. He was just a little rambunctious here, happy to play around. The minute he was turned loose from the pony, he was bucking, and I think he continues that throughout the majority of his gallop, with him just kicking up his heels and giving some just little playful. You like to see a horse that's acting like this. He's not doing anything malicious. He just feels really good. He would love to be doing a little bit more here, which obviously we're gonna hold off, as he's just about 5 days out from race day. Excellent job by the rider to just keep him in hand and let him play. You know, there's no point fighting with the horses sometimes. Just got to let them be horses. They're kind of like children on occasion. You just got to let them do what they want to do, and then they'll go ahead and do their job. So here's a nice look at Iron Fist. He was the first of the Asmussen contingent that shipped in yesterday to get to go out. This was, about 6:15-ish this morning. We got to catch him just as he was coming off the track before Gunrunner went out as well. And throughout his entire gallop, you'll see he's going to be pretty headstrong. He would love to do a lot more than he's being allowed to do, but really nice mover here despite the heavy hold on him. He's galloping well up underneath himself, which I like to see. That gives him a lot of propulsion. Iron Fist, a winner last time out of the Governor's Cup. He's won a couple of stakes races this year. In fact, he's hitting at a 50% strike rate. He's had 8 outs, 4 wins, including the Grade 3 Cornhusker and the Evangeline Downs Mile. He just loves the mile. This is one of those horses that the mile hits right between the eyes. He's had 7 outs, 5 wins, a second and a third. So this distance is just going to be key for him. And Steve Asmussen has already been a winner of the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile in the past. Here's a look at the Breeders' Cup Mile pre-entered fields. World Approval, your possible favorite in here. Obviously, this will be a little bit shorter when entries are taken on Monday, because you have several horses with first preference in other races. I would say one of my particular favorites in this race, though, is going to be Heart to Heart. He shipped in with that East Coast flight yesterday, and he had his first stroll here over the Del Mar main track this morning, and it looked like he shipped over here absolutely beautifully. You're going to get to watch him roll through this work. He is just covering tons of ground. He's a little headstrong. I thought a really great gallop here from Heart to Heart, who will go postward for Brian Lynch. He's been a little bit on the unlucky side. 31 outs, 13 wins, 5 runner-up finishes, and all of those have just been in key, really big races. And I think if you combine those, it would be less than a length away from being like a 4-time Grade 1 winner. So maybe the Breeders' Cup could be his big breakthrough moment to become a champion. But Heart to Heart looking fantastic this morning at Del Mar. Nice big strong gallop there from Heart to Heart. We'll take a look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf Field. And all the way at the bottom, you'll find the name Ultima D from the barn of Wesley Ward. She had a gallop just a little bit ago. Daughter here of Scat Daddy. Broke her maiden against Stakes Company last time out at Kentucky Downs. She had tried boys to break her maiden a couple different times, and she ran well enough. She finished second to Blue Blood, who came back to win, and was only beaten in neck by El Duce, who looked very good that day. Back to fillies, but she did win against Stakes Company as she prepares for the juvenile turf. Lots of good energy from her this morning. And that's kind of been the trend for a vast majority of the Breeders' Cup horses this morning as the weather has gotten a little bit cooler. A lot of them really coming out here and feeling good. You're getting a lot of playfulness, and you can see they're all sharp, ready for race day just a week away. Just having a little renovation break right now here on breederscup.com. Thank you for joining us every morning leading up to the Breeders' Cup for the workouts as well as the gallopers. And you can watch these on demand later as well. Also follow along on social, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, Breeders' Cup, getting it all covered on all fronts so you can stay well informed for the 34th Annual Breeders' Cup World Championships. Just want to give a quick update right now as we are waiting for the tractors to get off the track and open back up for horses training. But the weather here starting to change a little bit. Yesterday we had that very heavy obscuring fog. Today we have a low level of haze, but the track itself has really great visibility, and now a wind is starting to pick up. It's westward blowing, but that should possibly blow away some of this fog. We're going to have a little bit more clear skies, and we can start to see the sun coming up over the mountains. But a little bit warmer weather-wise, but that crisp air really starting to blow here, and it is a headwind. So when we have horses that are working, take that into consideration. If you see any slower times, it could possibly be because the wind has picked up here at Del Mar. Here's a quick look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Field as we are waiting for the tractors to complete the renovation here at Del Mar. Just one break in the mornings in preparation for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. And as you were looking earlier at the turf course, you can see the rail is being moved out. They will keep the rail out in the middle of the turf course so that the races that are run prior to Breeders' Cup this opening week at Del Mar don't use the inside, and they will save that for the Breeders' Cup races themselves. Some of the horses that'll be competing on the grass include Encumbered, who we did see yesterday, schooling in the gate after a very nice gallop. His lone 2 off the board finishes have been when he's tried the dirt. First on debut, and then most recently in the Grade 1 front runner at Santa Anita, but he will get back on the grass for the juvenile turf. He is scheduled to work here right after this renovation break for Simon Callahan. And he will work on the main track. We don't have any turf workers today, although we do have them scheduled starting tomorrow. We will keep you posted on all of those. Thanks again for joining us here on BreedersCup.com. We're about to have a bevy of work, so this is really the calm before the storm right here. If you're at home, feel free to go grab a quick cup of coffee, but get back soon. These works are going to start as soon as the tractors are off the racetrack. There's a good view right there of what I was talking about with the turf course rail being reset. They have moved it several paths off. As you can see, the whole rail itself just kind of comes down. They move out the posts, and then they will put the top part of the rail back on. And then for Breeders' Cup itself, they will move it all the way back down flush with the inside where it is generally set. We call it at 0. We're getting a couple of questions for social media today. The first asks, who is on the workout schedule? And, of course, this is hey, trainers going to make last-minute calls. But on the list right now, I have Hollywood Star for Dale Romans, the para horses from Jorge Navarro, Sharp Azteca, and War Story, the Tabulator from Larry Ravelli, Encumbered for Simon Callahan, and then Avenge and Paradise Woods for Richard Mandela. Another question is, was Avenge out already? And indeed, Paradise Woods and Avenge came out earlier, just with the pony, and they each took a full lap ponying. So they came out, stretched their legs, and then they'll come out to work a little bit later, probably sometime around first after the break right here when the group of workers will come and they have the fresh ground on top. So they did get out very early this morning, and it's not typical, but it's not unheard of for some horses to come out multiple times a morning, especially if one time it is to be ponied. Here's a look at Oscar Performance. He shipped in yesterday for the barn of Brian Lynch, and looks like he's walking across where he might even go visit the paddock in preparation for the Longines Breeders' Cup turf. When horses visit the paddock here, there's two ways to get there from the backside where the horses are situated. First thing is they can walk around the 7 furlong chute on the backside. The second way is they can walk directly across the track right above where the chute meets the main track. So it looked to me like he was walking right through that spot. And a couple other horses have been in the paddock, schooling in there as the renovation break went on, because now horses are going to be let loose from the paddock area, like you can see right here, where this is Paradise Woods waiting patiently to get to come on the track for her work. So they also cut across there, went and walked in the paddock, and now they will come out. Really simulates what they will do on race day, walking in from the receiving side and then meandering about the paddock and then coming out through the tunnel. That is the only way to get on the racetrack here from the front side at Del Mar. And it looked like she was more than happy to stand there and wait until she was allowed to come out. And she's going to take a turn here and head back off to begin her work. Again, Richard Mandela sent out both Paradise Woods and Avenge with the ponies this morning to take the edge off. So hopefully we'll see them being well behaved. And we'll watch as she takes a turn. Avenge pointed towards the distaff. I'm sorry, the filly and mare turf. Okay. Paradise Woods making her turn now. That's Paradise Woods taking her turn now, going the right way with their pony. Flavien Prat did take the drive down today to work Richard Mandela's horses. He's been aboard Paradise Woods in all 6 of her lifetime outs. 3 of those were wins, including an 11-length score in the Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks. I'm sorry, Santa Anita Oaks. And then also the Grade 1 Zenyatta last time out, the Breeders' Cup win and your in race, getting her berth here into the distaff. You're watching Paradise Woods now, completing her final work in preparation for the Longines Breeders' Cup distaff. Flavien Prat, her normal rider aboard here. She broke off on the backside and was eager to get into her work. And you can see nice, pretty much loose rein the entire way around, doing it all on her own. And like we had been seeing from several of these, a good gallop out, not being asked at any point in this work, but quickening on her own as she came down the stretch here. Looks to be getting over the surface just fine. And she'll finish up her work close to where she started it. Remember, Paradise Woods did come out on the track earlier this morning to have a little bit of a pony, take some of the edge off. So I expected her to be nice and calm here. And she was. Mandela, a Hall of Famer for more reasons than one, as he gets her ready for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. As she finishes up her work, we will switch over to the Tabulator. This is a live look at him on track right now for Larry Ravelli. The Tabulator, the winner of the Grade 3 Iroquois last time out. And he will be putting in his paces. Right now he's just with the pony, getting ready for the Ascension Jet Breeders' Cup Juvenile. We'll stick close to him and we'll watch him as when he gets ready to break off and turn back around. We'll chat a little bit more about the Tabulator. Here's a look right now at Encumbered. We talked about him because he had that great gallop yesterday and then visited the starting gates for a schooling. Simon Callahan sends him out getting ready for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Looks like he's going to have a long gallop up before he starts to get down to his final piece of work here. And you can see his rider just starting to ask him right now. And we'll keep an eye on Encumbered here. He was so professional yesterday, this 2-year-old turf runner working on the main track at Del Mar for the juvenile turf. Good work there from Encumbered, and took him just a little bit to get going. But he finished up really nice. Again, we saw him yesterday. He just galloped so professionally. He went and visited the starting gate, and he was just a picture in there. And here, just a workman-like work for his final paces before the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. We don't have a time for him. It didn't look super fast, but again, turf horse here on dirt, although he just skims over the main track. I'm surprised that he ran so poorly when they tried him on the dirt, but I see why they went that direction with him. He just gets over the ground very nicely. Great professional racehorse here for a 2-year-old from the Simon Callahan barn. One good thing about watching the horses during the workouts or even just the gallops is you can really get a feel for body language and attitude on a horse. And this is a really great example here. The Tabulator, you can see I've talked about the weather. It is not by no means warm out here at all. And you can see he's very lathered up. Underneath where the reins rub on his neck and where his breast collar hits, also between his legs, he's got a ton of lather. But this is how the Tabulator is. In his works previously, even sometimes on race day, he ends up like this. So nothing to be alarmed about. And if you see him on Breeders' Cup Day and he's a little bit worked up, you can know that's just him. So the Tabulator getting ready here to have a work, anxious to break away from his pony. And he'll set down to do his final piece of work before the Ascension Gent Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Ooh, Boltiora, watch out. The Tabulator is in town. This horse really excelling down the lane here, well within himself, but picking up the pace, continuously getting quicker and quicker. Really great work there, but well within himself with a nice gallop out there from the Tabulator, who was just gobbling up the ground here. Here's a look now at Avenge, who prepares for the filly and mare turf, winner of the Grade 1 Rodeo Drive last time out. Flavian Prat, again, making the drive down the 5 here to work the Mandela horses, and she looks like she wanted to get into her work as well. Some of these horses have to be niggled at and asked to break off. Not so with Avenge. She goes right down to business here. I don't expect to see her finishing up too fast since she is a turf horse working on the dirt here, but I like to see this nice long stride, and you can see Flavian's got nice long easy reins here on this mare, and she looks like she's enjoying this final piece of move before the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf.
She looked like she really galloped.
Avenge looks like she could probably go around again. Not visually too quick. I don't have a stopwatch here, but really evenly throughout, and finishing up well within herself. And you can see she was barely blowing as she pulled up. So plenty of fitness there. Did take her a little while to switch leads when she came off the turn. But that nice big sweeping stride of hers looking good for a final piece of work on the dirt, even though she's going to be running on the turf course. Here's a look at Sharp Azteca. A little bit of a wardrobe malfunction for him yesterday as he lost his saddle pad as well as one of his Breeders' Cup pads. Today it looks very firmly in place. Hopefully we won't have a repeat performance of the halfway undressing of Sharp Azteca. We'll keep an eye on him as he gets ready for the Las Vegas Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He is scheduled to work today, so we'll just keep an eye and see if he does turn away for work. Hollywood Story on track now, getting ready to work for Dale Romans. And here we're back to Sharp Azteca now. Like I said, a big flurry of activity first after the break, so we're going to try and keep you honest on as many horses as we can for what is going on live at all times. You just saw Hollywood Story, who is going to be ready to work. Sharp Azteca here continuing to jog backwards and getting a little bit warm as well. But we saw how aggressive he was yesterday, especially with the horses in front of him in the stretch. He was trying to duck down and really get after them in a racing type situation when he was supposed to just be galloping. So he could just be on tilt from yesterday. Sharp Azteca finishing up his work here for the Las Vegas Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Very quick to get going. He almost looked like he broke out of the gate. They were at a standstill, and he was instantly into full stride. Very quarter horsey to get going. Down the stretch there, you see his rider asking him just a little bit to make sure to maintain that, and he's pretty quick to get out of his full-on, all-out mode as they finish up around the turn. When they came right by us where I'm sitting from my vantage point at the top of the stretch, I could hear the rider kissing to him. So he kind of maintains that quick speed, but it definitely wasn't within his own, realm. He was being asked to do so. And I don't know if this is his normal workout mentality or if it's because he was just so aggressive yesterday. Maybe he's a little less sharp today. I'll be waiting to see what the final time will be here for this final preparation for Sharp Azteca. Here's a look at Hollywood Star. Ooh, does not like the pony today. Tammy Fox giving a grin, though. And this horse will get ready to break off for his final move for the Ascension Jet Breeders' Cup Juvenile. We did see his stablemate Free Drop Billy work here earlier. He's going to be going 5 panels here, we've been told. Nice jog on Hollywood Star. Really stretching out. Still not a fan of that pony, though. I want them to move away so he can kind of just focus on his job. Some horses, ponies really help out, and some horses, it might be more of a hindrance than any good. As you can see, instead of keeping his mind on what's about to happen, he's just thinking about he really wants to kick the pony. So trying to get a little bit more distance between Hollywood Star and the outrider. And they'll come up and break off to go 5 furlongs with Tammy Fox aboard for Dale Romans and the Alball family. Hollywood Star finishing up a 5 furlong move here at Del Mar in preparation for the Ascension Gent Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Tammy Fox kind of getting busy down there right towards the wire to keep him to task. He doesn't have a huge turn of foot by any means. He's a little bit one pace there, but good ground covering stride for his final work. And Tammy looked like she was smiling as they finished up. Let's go over to Golden Dragon now. On track here, was cross-entered in both the juvenile and the juvenile turf, but has been accepted into the field for the juvenile on the main track. All 4 lifetime starts, though, have been on the grass, and his last 2 outs have been back-to-back wins. Broke his maiden at Arlington Park, going a mile, and then won a non-2 life race at Churchill Downs, both of those by open lengths, and both of those with a little bit of trouble. Bumped at the start, bothered at the start. So he's been able to overcome, which is something good, especially when you're talking about young horses. 2-year-olds with not too many starts, or even 3-year-olds for that matter. Some of them can be immature. So the fact that he's been able to overcome and also handle the haul bodes well for him. He's just going to be kept pretty wide here for this nice gallop in preparation for the juvenile. as Golden Dragon finishes up his 2.5 laps of galloping here in preparation for the Breeders' Cup. We have a little bit of a lull in the action as far as Breeders' Cup horses on track are concerned. So what we're going to do is show back some of the works and gallops from earlier on. So these will not be live looks, but they will be from today, including the Dale Romans horses, also Sharp Azteca, Encumbered from the Simon Callahan barn, and a pair of horses from Richard Mandela. So enjoy some of these from earlier on this morning. Those were a couple works from earlier on today here at Del Mar, and here's a live look at Imperative. We saw him work just a couple days ago, and I thought he looked tremendous in his work. He's just going to take a lap or two jogging the wrong way here, and he looks spectacular, I have to say. He is throwing out his feet. He is energetic. You can't tell he just worked a few days ago. There was a little bit of construction going on with some poles, so you can see he's kind of bending his body away from the rail and looking over there. He was just not quite sure what was going on or what they were trying to build, but he still kept his forward motion, and he just looks spectacular here. And I was very impressed with his work, and I'm impressed with him right now, even though he's just jogging. He looks like a horse that is really on par here for a superb effort coming up on Friday in the Las Vegas Dirt Mile. He is a perfect 3 for 3 going the mile distance, although he's 0 for 7 at Del Mar. Here's a look at Catholic Boy from the barn of Jonathan Thomas. And Catholic Boy has impressed me every day we have seen him here at Del Mar. He's just a lovely mover. He covers a ton of ground. He is very forward in his gallops, but very reserved as well. He's listening to what his rider wants him to do, but I think that if she gave him an inch, she would take a mile. He seems to be just poised for a really good effort. Catholic Boy coming off a length score in the With Anticipation Stakes. That was all the way back in August at Saratoga. And if you go back and watch the race, it was a troubled trip for him. So when the running line says inched away, if you watch the replay, it wasn't necessarily that. It was that he just got room a little bit late. And the minute he found that open air to run into, he was just gone. Honestly, this horse gets over the main track so well. If they had wanted to enter him in the juvenile, I wouldn't have thought them crazy, because he just is covering the ground here so nicely, and he's just had fantastic energy ever since arriving here with the Surf Meets to Turf. He seems to be acclimating very well to Del Mar. Catholic Boy almost looks like he could gallop around here 3 or 4 times. Seems very, very fit, preparing for the juvenile turf. His conditioner, Jonathan Thomas, great story behind him. He was an amateur rider and was injured and paralyzed, and they told him he would never walk again. And Jonathan not only was able to overcome that, get out of the wheelchair and walk again, but he even rides as well. So a really great feel-good story surrounding Catholic Boy. Bridlewood Farms, Bob LaPenta, the owner of this son of More Than Ready. Reminds me a lot of his sire or grandsire, Bernardini. Big and bay and just a long striding, nicely moving horse here as he's going to pull up. Looks like he really could have gone around at least one more time. He had so much energy here and just well collected and poised for Jonathan Thomas. Here's a good look at the beach on the infield at Del Mar, which is going to be set up for Breeders' Cup. They brought in actual sand. And here's a look at the Breeders' Cup Classic projected field. You'll see War Story on here for Jorge Navarro. We saw his sharp Azteca working earlier, and War Story out on track right now to get ready to work. It's a son of Northern Afleet who has been fourth in his last two outs, beaten double digits in the Grade 1 Whitney as well as the Grade 1 Woodward. Maybe he just didn't like Saratoga, because prior to that he was 2 lengths clear when winning the Brooklyn at Belmont, going 1.5 miles. So distance not going to be an issue by any means for War Story. He earned a 102 buyer that day as well. It's the lone win that he has in his past performances for 2017. He has faced some of the horses that'll be lining up alongside him, including Gunrunner, who bested him in both of those races at Saratoga. You can see War Story backing up here. This is our first view of him. We did not get to see him as he came out yesterday. War Story will jog backwards for a bit, take a stand, then turn on break off here for his final preparations for the Breeders' Cup Classic. He's also pre-entered in the turf, but was accepted into the Classic field. Again, Monday is when we will do that official draw. It's going to be held at the barn at the beach in the village of Del Mar. As we wait for War Story to begin his work, here's a look at Oscar Performance. We saw him cross over earlier on to possibly head to the Paddock to school. We don't have cameras there, so I can't tell you for sure that he did, but he did head in that direction. Brian Lynch's contingent shipped in last night, and he'll be preparing for the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf, a 3-year-old here against older horses. And honestly, earlier on in the year, when the 3-year-old picture was a little bit muddled, I thought this could be the horse that might go home with the year-end honors for top 3-year-old, because he has just been unbelievably consistent throughout the year. It's not often we see a grass horse take home those kind of honors, but he ran very, very well after a couple of disappointed starts to begin the year on good ground. He got back into firm going in the middle of June, or the beginning of June, in the Pennine Ridge. He backed that up with a win in the Belmont Derby, and then he was dominating in the Grade 1 Secretariat at Arlington Park. Last time out, a little bit of a freshening. He tried the Turf Classic at Belmont, but that was against older horses, which of course he will face here in the Breeders' Cup at the 1.5 mile distance, like they will cover. He finished third that day, though, behind Beach Patrol, and I think he acquitted himself well. I don't think he embarrassed himself at all, finishing third to a very tough field that day. To me, it means that he is going to fit in well in this Breeders' Cup field, and he has an energetic gallop for his first spin over the strip. Back over to War Story now, who is galloping, just starting to try to get ready for work. You can see his rider has gotten his irons up nice and high, so he's going to be able to get into good position to get this horse clipping right along. And we'll stay tuned to watch War Story work in preparation for the Breeders' Cup. very similar work to what his stablemate Sharp Azteca gave us earlier, having his reins shook at down the lane and being chirped along as they came into the final turn. From my vantage point, I can clearly hear the rider kissing and smooching along to him, but never asking him too hard here. Ears up on the gallop out. So a really similar work to what we saw earlier from Sharp Azteca. Be interesting again to see the times for some of these. You always get a better perspective once you can see what the time was, because then you can obviously did they do it easy and it was fast? Was it nice and easy and intended to be slower? It's very hard to give too big of a judgment without times on some of these works, but almost identical to what we saw from the other Jorge Navarro trainee. And this was War Story putting in his last work for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Here's a look right now at Bullards Alley. Coming out here, very flashy for Tim Gleishaw, who shipped in yesterday on that same flight with Mike Maker and Brian Lynch. Bullards Alley earned himself the top Beyer speed figure on the year in North America on turf races when he won the Pattinson Canadian International in his last out. He won that race by over 10 lengths. So very impressive for a horse that hadn't seen the winner's circle since the Louisville Handicap back in May of 2016 here. But moving out with excellent energy. You can see from this view when all the horses are right here, like I mentioned, there's a little bit of construction that's going on. There's some big metal poles and several people out here moving them around. So there's a lot of noise and movement. So when you see the horses standing and looking and kind of ducking away from the rail, it's just because there's a lot of activity going on here and they're all not quite sure about what's going on. He looks anxious to get going. Happy to see these horses really seem to be flourishing here with the cooler weather. Everyone has been interested in galloping, and look at that. That's an old professional right there, a horse that just tucks his head nice and goes. These are the type of horses you just make everyone that rides them look good, and you want to be able to get on because they go around there like a pro. 35 lifetime starts here for this 5-year-old son of Flower Alley. Here's a live look right now at the grounds crew hard at work in preparation for opening day here where the surf meets the turf at Del Mar. What they're doing right now is they are moving the inner turf rail to, I'd say, about the 5 path or so. It's hard to tell from just that particular angle, but they want to use the inside of the turf course for the Breeders' Cup races. So in order for them to be able to use it for the other races, they're going to set that rail out. So the non-Breeders' Cup races that are going to be run before the Breeders' Cup will be set out on the more middle and outside of the turf course. So you can see they take that whole rail apart, move it stake by stake, and then they go back around and add the safety rail along the top. So a lot of labor goes into making sure we have just a beautiful grass course with fantastic integrity for these upcoming Breeders' Cup World Championship races. Here's a look at Elate from the barn of Bill Mott. She'll be competing in the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. And this filly just impressed me yesterday, and it looks like she's set to impress me again. I mean, I'm just falling in love with her. She comes out, and she is just so professional. You see that head nicely tucked. She just jogs around here. Beautiful mover, nice and fluid. The second her rider gives her just a little bit of go ahead, she picks up perfect canter around here. You can see her, even though she is equipped with some draws, nice and loose and paying attention, and I just thought she moved over the track here beautifully yesterday, and it looks like that's just Elate for you, because here she is again, just looking like the consummate professional. She is a 3-year-old who will be facing older horses. She brings in back-to-back open-length scores against Grade 1 Company, the Alabama, and then last time out in the Beldame against older horses. She has a couple of hiccups along the way. She was second in the CCA Oaks. She ran second in an allowance race, but that was in the slop. I think that as the distance has gotten longer for her, she's really been able to excel, and you can see why. She's a bigger filly with just these long legs and just covers ground, gobbling it up. I just love the way she skips over the ground here. I'm becoming a big Elate fan. I might be a little late to the bandwagon, but I think I've found my seat. She's preparing right now for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. Lady Aurelion walking off the track now as she had a routine gallop out here. We had lots of workers earlier on as the Breeders' Cup training is kind of winding down for the day. Earlier on, a pair of horses from the barn of Jorge Navarro worked, War Story and Sharp Azteca, and we were talking a little bit about how the works looked, and I thought that they looked pretty identical, kind of going off the same way and finishing up similar. Well, Sharp Azteca 5/8 in 58 and 2 and was urged along late, and then War Story, he also stomped the clock in 58 and 3. So while visually they looked very similar, on paper it looks like they were pretty similar as well. Of course, he had a much bigger gallop out, and nice to know though when we have the times coming up that as visually they looked like they were going pretty quick, the watches were stopped in good times as well. Carlin's approval out for a routine gallop here. She was out a little late in the morning yesterday as well for Happy Altar. Coming in off a 4-length score in the barely even last time out, she did get a starting slot in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint by winning the Princess Rooney back in July of this year, and that's the saddle towel she's wearing. A win and you're in from that race instead of her Breeders' Cup one. Looking very keen here today, as she did gallop yesterday in blinkers as well. We're talking about the works from the Jorge Navarro horses earlier. We're going to roll them back here right now. That sharp Azteca instantly getting into his work there, almost like a quarter horse as he gets going for the Las Vegas Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile here. And while he starts off very, very quick, he does have to get a little bit of urging when he finishes up the work. You can see as he comes down the lane, you'll see the rider shake his hands at him, and we could hear him smooching to him as he came through the turn here where our vantage point is. But this is sharp Azteca working earlier very quickly for Jorge Navarro. And then after this, we'll follow it up watching his stablemate War Story, as the two of them put in very similar times, and one getting ready for the Dirt Mile, one for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Here's where they start chirping, and midway down the lane, just watch as the rider kind of goes to encouraging him, shaking the reins up at him and throwing some crosses. So there was sharp Azteca finishing up his work earlier on this morning here at Del Mar, where he was clocked in 58 and 2. And then here's War Story breaking off. You see it takes him just a couple of strides to really get going, but he's going to be going much farther in his race. But again, it was just striking, as they obviously worked apart from each other, how similar their workouts were. And when we found out the times, then they were pretty darn close. This horse taking a little bit longer to get in the stride, but really rolling to begin with. And the same thing, you'll watch around the turn, the rider will start to chirp at him, and then he'll just get a little bit of niggling down the stretch. He finishes up really well, and with a big gallop out here for War Story, who is going to stop the clock in 58 and 3, and then he'll go out in 112 and 2. BreedersCup.com will have the workouts every day between now and the Breeders' Cup from about 7 in the morning until the last horse leaves the racetrack, so just about 9:30 to 10 o'clock. Hopefully we'll be getting some turf action coming up here sometime soon, but thank you for joining us. Don't forget to follow along, BreedersCup.com. You can follow on Breeders' Cup at Facebook, also Twitter, Periscope, and the YouTube channel. We'll be here to watch all of the workers as well as the gallopers. And then starting on Monday, we will have expanded coverage with Breakfast with the Works. Thank you for joining us here again on BreedersCup.com. We'll see you tomorrow.